Imagine waking up every day, doing everything right. You work. You try. You plan your future. And still, something feels off. Like you're moving, but not really going anywhere. You tell yourself, maybe I need more discipline. Maybe I need more motivation. But deep down, you know that's not the real problem. Because it's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're weak. It's something far more dangerous than that. You're being controlled. Not by people. Not by society. Not even by your past. But by something inside you, something you've never been taught to see. Every decision you make, what you chase, what you avoid, what you settle for, is being silently directed. And the scariest part? You think it's your choice. Some people spend their entire lives chasing money, thinking it will finally make them feel safe. Others chase approval, trying to fill a void they don't understand. And some keep running, without even knowing what they're running from. Different lives, different goals, but the same invisible force. A force that decides how high you can go, and how long you stay stuck. This is why two people, with the same opportunities, end up living completely different lives. One breaks free. The other stays trapped. Not because of talent. Not because of luck. But because of what's controlling them beneath the surface. And until you understand this, you will keep repeating the same patterns. The same choices. The same frustrations. The same life. Psychologist Abraham Maslow discovered something that most people still don't realize. Your life is not driven by your dreams. It's driven by your unmet needs. And until those needs are understood, you are not in control. You are reacting. You are surviving. You are stuck. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. What if the reason you feel stuck in life is not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're trying to climb from the wrong level? You don't feel stuck because you're lazy. You feel stuck because your mind is following a system you were never taught. Every human being is climbing a ladder. Not a visible one. Not something you can touch. But a psychological ladder, hidden inside your mind. Maslow called it a hierarchy. But in reality, it behaves more like a control system. At the bottom of this ladder are your most basic needs. Food. Rest. Safety. And here's the truth most people ignore. If these needs don't feel secure, your brain will not let you focus on anything higher. You can try to chase success. You can try to stay motivated. But your mind will quietly pull you back into survival mode. That's why some people feel constant anxiety, even when nothing is wrong. That's why some people overwork, not because they love success, but because they fear losing control. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because the brain doesn't care about your dreams. It cares about stability. It will sacrifice your potential just to keep you feeling safe. Now look at your life. The decisions you make, the risks you avoid, the things you delay, are they really your choices, or are they controlled by a deeper need you haven't fulfilled yet? Most people never ask this question. They think they need more discipline, more motivation, more productivity. But the real problem is hidden. They are trying to climb higher, while standing on an unstable base. And no matter how hard they try, they fall back. Again. And again. And again. Because you can't build a powerful life on a weak foundation. Maslow didn't just explain human needs. He exposed a pattern. A pattern that silently controls how high you can go. And until you understand where you stand on this ladder, you will keep chasing a version of life that was never available to you in the first place. Not because you are incapable, but because your mind is protecting you from something you don't even see. There is something strange about human behavior. Two people can live in the same world, have access to the same opportunities, yet walk completely different paths. One rises. The other stays stuck. Why? It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's something much deeper. Maslow called it levels of needs. And here's the truth most people never realize. You don't choose your life based on logic. You choose it based on what you still lack. Think about it. A person who feels unsafe doesn't dream about purpose. He dreams about survival. A person who feels ignored doesn't chase growth. He chases attention. A person who feels empty doesn't look for meaning. He looks for distraction. And slowly, without realizing it, your life becomes a reflection of your unmet needs. This is where Maslow's structure changes everything. He showed that human desire is not random. It's layered. Step by step. Level by level. And each level controls your behavior. In a completely different way. At the bottom, your body is in control. Hunger. Sleep. Survival. Above that, your fear takes control. Safety. Stability. Control. Then comes something more dangerous, the need to belong. To be accepted. To be liked. To not feel alone. This is where most people get trapped. Because they start living for others. Their choices change. Their personality shifts. Their identity becomes borrowed. And they don't even notice it happening. Then comes the next level, the need for respect. Status. Recognition. Validation. This is where people start chasing success, but not for growth. For approval. And finally, at the top of this invisible ladder, there is something rare. Something most people never reach. Self-actualization. Not success. Not money. Not validation. But becoming who you were actually meant to be. And here's the problem, you can't jump to the top. No matter how motivated you feel. No matter how many videos you watch. Because if something below is broken, it will pull you back down. Every single time. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you're lazy. But because something deeper inside you is still incomplete. And until you see it, you will keep fighting the wrong battle. There is a point in your life where survival is no longer the problem. You have food. You have safety. You are not in immediate danger. And yet, something still feels wrong. You feel empty. Not because something is missing physically, but because something is missing emotionally. This is where most people get confused. They think, why am I still not happy? Maslow answered this long ago. Because once your body feels safe, your mind begins to crave connection. Love. Belonging. Acceptance. And this need is far more powerful than you think. You don't just want people in your life. You want to feel seen by them. You want to feel understood, valued, chosen. And when this need is not fulfilled, your behavior starts to change, silently. You start chasing attention. You tolerate disrespect. You stay in the wrong relationships. Not because you're weak, but because your mind is trying to solve a deeper problem. Loneliness. This is the hidden trap of the third level. You can have money, you can have success, you can even have stability, but if you feel alone, your mind will still feel incomplete. That's why some people stay in toxic environments. That's why some people seek validation online. That's why some people lose themselves just to be accepted. They are not chasing people. They are chasing belonging. And here's the dangerous part, if you don't understand this need. You will think your actions are choices. But they're not. They're reactions. Reactions to an emotional void you haven't identified yet. Maslow didn't just describe needs. He exposed patterns. And at this level, the pattern is clear. People will sacrifice their identity. just to avoid feeling alone. So the real question is not, do you have people in your life? The real question is, do you feel connected or just surrounded? Because there's a difference. A dangerous one. And until you understand that difference, you will keep chasing people without ever feeling fulfilled. You think your life is random. But it's not. There's a structure behind everything you do, a silent ladder your mind is constantly trying to climb. And most people don't even know they're on it. Maslow called it a hierarchy. But in reality, it's more like a psychological trap. Because until you move up, you can't see what's above you. At the very bottom are your basic needs. Food, sleep, survival. If these are unstable, nothing else matters. You don't chase purpose. You chase relief. That's why a hungry mind cannot think about dreams. Then comes the second level, safety, stability, security, control. This is where most people get stuck. They don't take risks, not because they're weak, but because their brain is trying to protect them. Your comfort zone. It's not comfort. It's a survival cage. Then, something shifts. You start craving people, connection, love, belonging. Not because you're emotional, but because your brain is wired to survive in groups. Rejection feels painful, because to your brain, it once meant death. That's why you care what people think, even when you say you don't. Then comes esteem, respect, status, recognition. Now you don't just want to belong, you want to matter. You want to be seen, heard, valued. This is where ambition is born, but also where comparison begins. And if you're not careful, this level becomes an endless loop. No matter how much you achieve, it never feels enough. And finally, the level almost no one reaches. Self-actualization. This is where you stop chasing validation and start becoming who you truly are. Not what society wants. Not what fear allows. But what your potential demands. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't climb this ladder once. You fall back. Again. And again. One bad phase, one loss, one fear. And your mind drops back to survival. That's why you feel stuck. Not because you lack potential, but because you're trapped. On a level you don't even see. And the moment you realize where you actually are, that's when everything changes. Because you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what is my mind really trying to satisfy? You think you want success. But your brain wants something else. It wants comfort. And comfort is dangerous. Because once your basic needs are met, food, safety, a little stability, your mind does something unexpected. It stops pushing you forward. It starts protecting what you already have. And that's where most people get stuck. Not at the bottom, but in the middle. Safe, but unsatisfied. You see, Maslow never said people naturally climb upward. He implied something deeper. Each level is not just a step, it's a trap. A psychological cage that feels like success, but quietly limits your growth. Think about it. If your life is stable, your income is okay, your relationships are fine, why would your brain risk losing it? Why would it push you toward uncertainty? It won't. Because your brain is not designed for greatness. It's designed for survival. And survival hates risk. So instead of chasing your true potential, you start protecting your current identity. You avoid challenges. You delay decisions. You overthink everything. Not because you're weak, but because your mind is trying to keep you safe. And safety becomes your prison. This is why so many people feel stuck. Not because they lack talent, But because they've become too comfortable to grow, they trade possibility for predictability, dreams for routine, expansion for security. And slowly, they forget who they could have been. But here's the truth most people never realize: growth always feels unsafe. Every level above you requires you to lose something below you. Certainty, control, familiarity. That's the price. And most people are not willing to pay it. So they stay. Not because they choose to, but because their needs choose for them. And the longer you stay in comfort, the harder it becomes to leave. Because comfort doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like home. There comes a moment in every life when comfort stops feeling safe. And that moment is dangerous. Because most people don't recognize it. They think they are stable. They think they are secure. They think they are doing fine. But what they don't see is this: they are not growing anymore. And in Maslow's hierarchy, that's where the real trap begins. You see, once your basic needs are met, food, safety, routine, your mind doesn't push you forward. It tries to keep you there. Because safety feels good. But growth feels uncertain. And the brain hates uncertainty. So what does it do? It creates invisible resistance. You procrastinate. You overthink. You doubt yourself. Not because you are lazy, but because your mind is trying to protect you from the unknown. This is the turning point. The moment where most people stop climbing. They build a life that looks stable, but feels empty. They stay in safe jobs, safe relationships, safe routines. And slowly, they start feeling something strange. A quiet frustration. A feeling that something is missing. That feeling is not random. That is your next level calling you. Maslow called it the need for growth, the need to become more than you are. But here's the truth most people never realize. Growth requires breaking your own safety. And that feels like loss. That's why people resist it. They say things like, "I'll start later. I'm not ready yet. What if it doesn't work?" But underneath all those thoughts, there is only one fear: losing control. Because when you step beyond safety, you enter uncertainty. And uncertainty means you are no longer in control. But here's the paradox. The life you want only exists outside that control. Not inside your comfort zone. Not inside your routine, but beyond it. And this is where everything changes. Because once you understand this, you stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for motivation. You realize you will never feel ready. You have to move anyway. That's the shift. From survival to growth. From fear to expansion. From safety to becoming. And very few people make this shift. Not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable. And most people choose comfort over potential. So the real question is, will you stay where it feels safe, or step into who you're meant to become? Because the next level of your life is waiting on the other side of fear. There's a dangerous illusion most people never escape. They believe they are growing. They believe they are improving. But in reality, they are just upgrading their cage. You get a better job, more money, more comfort. And for a moment, it feels like progress. But then something strange happens. That feeling disappears. And you're right back where you started. Empty. Restless. Still searching. This is where Maslow's theory becomes uncomfortable. Because most people never actually climb the hierarchy, they get stuck decorating the same level. You think you're chasing success, but what you're really chasing is relief. Relief from insecurity. Relief from fear. Relief from not feeling enough. That's why someone can have everything, money, status, relationships, and still feel completely lost. Because external upgrades don't fix internal needs. Maslow made this clear. If your lower needs are unstable, your higher goals become illusions. You don't pursue purpose. You pursue distraction. You don't build meaning. You build noise. And the modern world makes this worse. Because it constantly tells you, you're one step away from happiness. One more achievement, one more upgrade, one more validation. But that one more never ends. Because the real problem was never outside. It was inside your unmet foundation. And until that foundation is stable, you will keep running in circles. Faster. Smarter. But never free. Real growth is not about adding more. It's about fixing what's broken beneath. It's about asking a question most people avoid: am I actually growing, or just escaping discomfort? Because the truth is, the moment you stop running, you finally see what's been controlling you all along. And that's the moment your real growth begins. There comes a moment when something feels off. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet discomfort. You're doing everything right. Working. Trying. Moving forward. And yet, something inside you refuses to feel satisfied. It's strange. Because from the outside, your life might look completely normal. Maybe even successful. But internally, there's a gap. A silent tension between what you have and what you feel. Most people ignore this moment. They distract themselves. More work. More scrolling. More noise. Because facing it feels uncomfortable. But this is the exact moment where everything begins to change. Because that feeling is not random. It's a signal. A signal that something deeper is being ignored. Maslow understood this long before most people did. He realized that human behavior is not driven by what we want, but by what we are missing. And the most dangerous part, you don't always feel what's missing directly. Instead, it shows up as confusion, restlessness, a quiet sense of being lost. You think you need motivation. You think you need discipline. But what you actually need is alignment. Because when your needs are not aligned, your mind creates resistance. You start doubting yourself, overthinking simple decisions, losing interest in things you once enjoyed. Not because you are weak, but because your system is trying to tell you something. Something important. Something you've been avoiding. And here's the truth most people never realize: you are not stuck. You are misaligned. There is a difference. Being stuck means there's no way forward. But misalignment means you are walking in a direction that your mind does not agree with. And your brain will not support a path that doesn't feel safe, meaningful, or stable. That's why progress feels heavy. That's why clarity feels distant. Because before you move forward, your mind is asking one simple question: are we safe enough to grow? If the answer is no, it will slow you down. Silently. Without warning. And until you understand this, you will keep trying harder, without ever moving further. But the moment you see it clearly, everything shifts. Not outside. Inside. And that's where real change begins. What if the problem was never your life, but the way you've been living it? You thought you needed more motivation, more discipline, more effort. But Maslow showed something different. You don't rise by force. You rise when your needs stop controlling you. Most people never reach the top, not because they're incapable, but because they're unconsciously stuck. Stuck chasing safety. Stuck needing approval. Stuck trying to prove something to a world that was never watching that closely. And the deeper truth: You can spend your entire life climbing, and still be climbing the wrong mountain. Because if your lower needs are unmet, your mind will quietly pull you back down. Not loudly, not obviously, but slowly, through doubt, distraction, and fear. That's why some people sabotage their own success. That's why peace feels uncomfortable to them. That's why they go back to chaos. Because it feels familiar. But there's a moment, a rare moment, when you start to see it. You realize you were never lazy. You were never lost. You were just responding to what your mind believed you needed. And the second you see that, something shifts. You stop chasing everything, and you start understanding yourself. Because self-actualization is not about becoming someone new. It's about removing everything that was never truly you. No more pretending. No more proving. No more running. Just clarity. And here's the truth most people never hear. The top of Maslow's pyramid is not success. It's freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from validation. Freedom from unconscious control. But reaching that level requires something uncomfortable. Awareness. Because once you see what's controlling you, you can't unsee it. And that's where your real life begins, not when everything is perfect, but when you finally understand why it never felt enough. So the question is, are you still chasing what you think you want? Or are you ready to see what's actually been driving you all along?